Hello and welcome to All for Animals. I'm your host, Rachel, and today we've got a very special guest on the show. We have a backyard birding expert with us today. This is such an exciting episode for me, especially because I'm seriously chomping at the bit to get started on my very own little pollinator garden and wildlife habitat in my backyard. And I'm just stoked to have this opportunity to pick Rick's brain a little bit. So welcome to the show, Rick. And would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure thing. Birding with Rick here. Hi, everyone seems to know me from my Instagram account, which I'll tell you the story of that in a second, but it blew up over Christmas time. But no, I'm a bird lover, first and foremost. I'm also a dad, I'm a husband, and my love for birds goes back about 10 years. And if you don't mind, I'll just tell your audience a little bit about my birding history.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So about 15 years ago, my family moved and had an opportunity to move to South Africa. That's right. We were living in Detroit. I was working for an automotive company, right? As you do in Detroit, right? The big three are there. And they were looking for a finance guy or gal to move to Africa and help out with a factory there. And we had 3 young kids, but we're also big into adventure. And we're like, yeah, let's go to Africa for a couple of years. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? I think my parents, so the kids' grandparents were a little freaked out, but it was, we wanted to do that. So as you do when you're in South Africa, you go on safaris all the time. And the kids loved it. Every opportunity to go see the giraffes and the elephants and the lions, like they were all in, right? So all the school holidays, that's what we would do, is go up to Kruger National Park. And as you do, you get these little brochures as you enter the park. Here's all the checklists of all the animals that you're going to see. And the kids love that. But what happens is after a while, they get bored of not seeing one of the big animals, right? Because in between animal sightings, you have to drive and you have to look and you're constantly looking for the animals, and the kids are getting bored. So I was like, all right, I got to come up with something to keep the kids occupied. And in those brochures, there was like a whole page on the birds, but we had ignored that because that's not exciting, right? That's not like a lion. But I'm like, all right, let's try to find the birds of South Africa. And if you know anything about the birds over there, they're so colorful, right? They're beautiful, like the rainbow colors, like the lilac-breasted roller. If you've never seen what that bird is, Google lilac-breasted roller. It'll blow your mind.
Okay.
And eventually, it became more about seeing the birds for the kids and checking them off the list than it did the mammals.
Like a scavenger hunt.
We'd have to put like a sign in the on our car, we're bird watching, we're not animal watching, because people would be like, hey, what do you see? What do you see? And we're like, well, we see a carmine bee eater. And they're like, well, what is that? And we're like, it's a bird. So that was like what we did for a couple of years in South Africa with the kids, is we were watching the birds. So then fast forward, we moved back to North America, and I kind of forgot about the bird watching. That was something I did with the kids in Africa. And then I got back into finance, got a job, and really a couple of years went by, and I was just like so focused on work. And I think eventually I was getting burnt out with work. And my wife is like, Rick, you need a hobby. You need to get out of the house. You need to get out of the office. Like, you're so wound up, right? And so I'm like, all right, what should I do? What do I want to do to get out of the house? And I remembered how much fun it was to watch the birds in Africa. And I thought to myself, well, are there any birds here? Are there any birds in my neighborhood? And like, you don't think about it if you're not watching the birds. Like they're just background noise, or they're just there, but you don't notice them. Mm-hmm. And so I Googled, bird watching spots near me, and lo and behold, there's tons of birds in North America. They're everywhere. They're beautiful. And so I just started noticing them. I dusted off my binoculars from the basement. I went and found our camera that we were using to take pictures of animals. And I said, I'm going to start doing this now. We live in Ontario. So I started just going outside. It's easy as just walking outside, taking a trail for a half hour, and I'll tell you what, the release of the anxiety and the depression, all of that from working so much, I found the release. And
Well,
then I
heck
started
yeah.
finding a community. Bird watchers, they're awesome people. Like if you go to a spot where there's birds and you got your binoculars, they're going to come up to you and say, "Hey, what are you seeing?" And if you tell them, "Hey, I'm a newbie. I don't know what I'm looking at. I think it's a duck, maybe it's a goose." They're going to tell you because they want to share, right?
Sure.
So I started getting friends in the local area. And one in particular, this guy, he's just a bird genius. And I latched onto him and he became my mentor, teaching me all about the birds. And so, as much as I could, I would go out birding with him early in the mornings before work or on the weekends. And so that was like, I would say 5 years ago when I really started finding out about birds in North America. And fast forward to like now last September, there was a reorg at work and I lost my job, and that's okay. But I'm like, what do I want to do? Do I want to keep doing finance, or I want to dive into this bird hobby that I love and try to make it a business? So that was like a big leap. So I said, I'm going to try it. You get one chance to try something in your life. And so I started making Instagram videos about bird watching, like how to identify this bird versus that bird, or how to attract birds into your backyard, like with different bird feeders, right?
Yeah.
And it took off. Like I had 400 followers, like in November when I was like, all right, I'm just going to try this. And then it went to 1,000 followers, and then 2,000 followers. And then I had 100,000 followers by like mid-January. I'm like, something is working.
Yeah.
People like birds and they like that they're everywhere, right? All you have to do is go outside, or even if you're stuck inside, look out the window, you're gonna see a bird. And they're always like happy. They're always chirping, they're always jumping around, they're always eating. And I find them so fascinating. So like as of right now, I have 139,000 followers, which to me is like it's insane, but it's also an opportunity because I can share my love for birds. And if everyone there also becomes a bird lover, that's what it's going to take to save the birds, because the birds
Absolutely.
are in trouble. There's so much habitat loss. There's so many birds that are in the decline
Hmm.
because of what the world is right now, that we need more people to care about birds. Because when you learn about something, then you're going to start caring about it, and then you're going to want to make steps to protect them. So
Yeah.
that's really what I'm hoping. So that's what I'm doing with my following. I'm just educating, and I have a program where you can take my 8-week course, and I will teach you all about the birds in your area, how to find the birds, how to identify them, and how to start your birding journey. So it's like a beginner course. So that's what I'm
Wonderful.
doing now. It's a full-time job and absolutely love it.
Well, congratulations on the absolutely skyrocketing social media presence. That is not easy to do. And I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised, really, because you are so enthusiastic. It's very contagious. And you're right about birds kind of often being the background noise. And as soon as you redirect your attention towards them, you're kind of wondering, how did I miss this for so long?
That's right. That's
And
right.
there's no like barrier to access them. As like you were saying too, you don't even have to go outside if you don't want to. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So like in my yard right now, we moved to this house 4 years ago during COVID.
Okay.
We moved here in 2020, and I started keeping a list of all the birds that have been in my yard. Um, and I started with one bird feeder, and then I added a second bird feeder. And then as I'm doing research on birds, I'm like, actually, each bird kind of wants their own type of seed. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of folks just buy like the mixed bag, right? And they're like, oh, there's something for everybody, which it's not really true. So once I
Sure.
started splitting out my bird feeders, I think I'm looking outside. I've got one, two, three, four, five different bird feeders, and they all have different things in them. Um, I started noticing the diversity of birds coming into my yard. And my list now of birds that have been in my yard is like 126 bird species,
Oh, okay.
right? That's a lot. That's a
That's
lot.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common ones that you get to see?
Well, yeah. So every day I'll have, like in this winter, we've got dark-eyed juncos. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got northern cardinals. Everyone loves the cardinal. Blue jays. Everyone
Love
loves the
them
blue jays.
too.
Those are the bullies. They're going to come in and they're going to squawk like crazy, and they want a whole shelled peanut, right?
Oh,
If you
okay.
want blue jays in your yard, you got to give them peanuts.
Okay.
And with the shell, because they want to swoop in, grab the peanut with their shell, and if they're the smart ones will take two peanuts in their mouth,
Okay.
right? I don't know if you know this, but a blue jay has a pouch in their throat called a gular pouch
I
that they
did
can
not.
open up and store nuts in their pouch and then fly up to a tree and kind of not throw it up, but kind of open up their pouch and it comes out,
So
right?
almost like a hamster's pouch is in their cheeks, but a little
Yeah,
further
that's
south.
right. It's got a little kangaroo pouch, but it's inside their mouth. So it looks like it's choking itself, but actually what it's doing is it's storing that nut. Amazing
Okay.
thing about blue jays is they're kind of given the credit for planting all the oak trees in the West.
Okay.
After the last ice age, kind of all the trees got demolished. And then a blue jay can store up to 5 acorns in its pouch, and it flies a little bit, and then it hides the acorns for later. But if
Okay.
they don't remember where they all are, if they don't come back to eat them, or maybe the blue jay dies and those acorns are now stashed, that's how the oak trees got planted all around North America. It's just
Wow.
blue jays take them off. So
I
we
did
got
not know
blue
that.
jays. We have mourning doves. If you want mourning doves in your yard, it's super easy. All you got to do is start sprinkling some seed on the ground. Mourning doves, what they love grain. So they're in the farmer's field, and if you ever see like during harvest time, if any grain gets spilt by the truck or by the tractor, the mourning doves go crazy there. Um,
Gotcha.
the mourning doves also want like this seed that's kind of at in the wintertime, if you don't clean up your garden, right, your old plants go to seed, they're going to be harvesting all those seeds for you.
Gotcha.
But for me, I'll just sprinkle some of the sunflower seeds on the ground, and then the mourning doves come crazy. And they always feed in pairs because mourning doves, they mate for life. So
Yeah.
you can usually count by twos all the mourning doves. I think I've had up to 26 doves in my backyard. And
Wow.
that's what I'll do is like if I go on holiday and all the birds have left because I didn't feed when I was gone, I'll start off with putting some seed on the ground, and the next day I'll have 20 mourning doves, and that'll kickstart the bird feeding in the backyard.
And they
See
let
what else?
all their
We've got
friends know.
they all know. They all know. We've got eastern bluebirds just started coming back into our yard. So I hung up bluebird boxes. Bluebirds, they want to eat mealworms.
Oh, okay.
So you can buy actually dried mealworms
Hmm.
and put it in a little special feeder. My feeder for bluebirds is bright blue, and I hang it by the house. They've got their own thing. They love it. So I don't know, bluebirds bring me joy.
Oh, yeah. They're so
Yeah.
pretty.
They're gorgeous, right? The male's all bright blue and the female is like lighter blue with a little bit of orange.
Yeah.
What else do I have coming into my yard right now? Tons of woodpeckers. So if you want a woodpecker in your backyard, you got to hang what's called suet.
Okay.
It looks like a cake with sunflower seeds in it and other seed, but really what it is, it's rendered beef fat.
Okay.
I make like if you're grilling up some ground beef, right, and you've got the leftover meat oil, the meat drippings, right, you can
Yes.
save that, add in some peanut butter, add in some bird seed, and then I put them in little like muffin tins, and
Okay.
then I put it in the freezer, and then they solidify, and then I put it outside. So it's like almost free. But
Yeah.
woodpeckers, they want this suet. And so right now I've got downy woodpeckers, which are the little small ones, hairy woodpeckers, which are a little bigger, red-bellied woodpeckers, yellow-bellied sapsuckers, and the pileated woodpecker. So I've got 5 types of woodpeckers coming to my yard every day.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Now, when you were talking about like draining off the fat that's left over when you cook something with like ground beef, I'm assuming does that have to be something without any of like the seasonings and stuff that you would put in it?
Um, yeah, so I usually drain it, and then if I'm making taco meat, I'll add the taco seasoning after I drain it.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. Would it hurt the birds? Like, I'm not sure. Like, sometimes we'll add hot pepper to bird seed if like squirrels are a problem.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, because
so
birds can't taste. They
right.
don't have like the spice
Yeah, I don't,
receptors, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty cool too. All right, so you are so knowledgeable about all of these different types of birds, not even just on our own continent, but in others such as Africa. Where did you amass all of this knowledge from?
well, your audience can't see behind me, but I've got so many bird books. Um,
Yes.
here's a trick. If you want to start building your bird book collection, which I highly recommend, I just love books, is go to the thrift stores nearby. And that's where you're going to find probably your first bird field guide. My favorite one is Sibley Birds. Uh,
Okay.
he's got he's got ones for birds of the east and birds of the west, but it doesn't really matter. Just start with one book, right?
Sure.
And you're gonna see which ones you like. Like some bird books are use illustrations, some bird books use photos. I
Yeah.
prefer the illustrations, but you might find that you like the photos better. But that's how I started with the identification. Is what am I seeing? And then go home and try to find it in the book, right? That's the old school method, right?
Sure.
It wasn't technology based. This was before I found, right, all the apps that I can use and all the technology. So old school is either take a photo or try to remember what it looks like and go back and find the book. Or they're called field guides because they're supposed to be small enough you can take them in the field. But
Sure.
I find that clunky and hard, and I don't really want to get my books in the rain or in the snow where I live. So
Fair
then I
enough.
got a little smarter and I'm like, all right, there's got to be a better way to identify these birds. And then I started finding the apps that everyone can download and start using. And like a couple apps that I really recommend is eBird. So the letter
eBird.
E and then bird.
Okay.
It's it's the most magnificent citizen science project in the world. So it's owned and run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And that's a
Okay.
long. So ornithologist just means the study of birds.
Mm-hmm.
And Cornell is the university up in Ithaca, New York. It's an Ivy League school. So it's like one of it's a really good school. And so what they've
Yes.
done is they've created this library, but it's a digital library of all the photos of birds in the world. And so what they've done is they allow you to go on your phone, make a checklist in your backyard or wherever you're birding of all the birds you see, and then you submit that checklist. It goes through the interweb and it lands at Cornell's University. And then you can upload the photos you see of the birds. And so what it's doing is it's collecting all the bird checklists around the world. And then it organizes it and sorts it, and then you can type in your county or your local area. It'll show you all the birds that have been seen in your area. And
Very
then it goes
cool.
one step further and it says which person has seen the most birds in your area or
Oh,
in your state or in your province. So it kind of gamifies birding,
yeah.
and you can see, all right, Rick, I've seen 100 birds this year in my county. And it says I'm ranked number 25 in my county. And Sarah up at the top, she's seen 250 birds. And here's all the birds she's seen. And so once you discover this, you can start really geeking out and saying, I want to see all the birds in my area. So then you start studying and say, what's the best chance to see a black-throated green warbler, one of these rare birds. Where's the best place? And so it'll show you the last time it was seen is here. Here's what it looks like. Here are directions on how to get there. So then I just started going deep into it and trying to say, all right, how do I become, the top birder in my area? How do I find all these birds? So that was kind of my progression to going maybe too deep into the birding world.
You know what this is reminding me of? It's reminding me of that game that came out, I think, right around the same time as the pandemic with like the Pokemon Go.
That's right. Birding is just like Pokemon. All right. The Pokédex is is the bird book, right? Finding the
Yeah.
birds is the Pokemon. Exactly. My kids collected Pokemon cards when they were kids, and this is
Yeah.
so similar. Or like in my generation, it was collecting baseball cards, right?
Sure.
You want to catch them all, you want to collect them all, and birds are kind of the same, right?
Yeah.
They're all unique. They all are found in a different area, but a lot of birders, new ones, can get maybe what's the word? They can get discouraged when they look in this book and there's 1,000 birds to find. That seems a little overwhelming, especially when a lot of them look the same.
Okay.
So
Yep.
what eBird does, it narrows the list to just the birds in your area. So instead of 1,000 possibilities, it'll say, Rachel, in your county, all time, there's only been ever 300 different birds.
Okay.
So that instantly takes it from 1,000 to 300. And then
Sure.
you can narrow the list and say, well, how many birds have been seen in the last 5 years? I mean, I'm not talking about birds that are once a generation or once every 100 years, or even birds that maybe are extinct now, just the last 5 years. And it'll say, well, actually, there's only been 250 birds in your county in the last 5 years. You're like,
Hmm.
all right, that's better, 1,050.
Yeah.
But then what about this month, right? Because now it's March. So how many birds are seen this month in my county? And then it'll say, well, actually, there's only 120 birds that you're likely to see if you go out birding right now. Well, that just eliminated 90% of the confusion. Now I just need to learn 10 ducks, two kinglets, six doves, maybe a handful of hawks, and then I can go see and really know the birds in my area. So that's kind of what I teach in my courses, how to simplify the confusion and how to make it a successful hobby and not an overwhelming hobby. That's
Sure.
kind of cool.
Taking it in little bite-sized pieces.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I love it. So I saw on your Instagram that you've also done some pretty interesting volunteer work with birds as well, doing like the leg banding. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So remember when I first moved to Ontario, I Googled,
Uh-huh.
are there any birds near me? And
Yeah.
what popped up is there was a bird observatory about 40 minutes away. And I didn't know what a bird observatory was. Is that a place where you go and study birds or I observe them? I don't know what. So I just got to figure this out. So I went down there and it was closed because it's
Oh,
wintertime. And I'm like, all right, let me go back to their website. And they go, oh, okay. So what they do is they open the observatory twice a year during migration. So they have a
oh,
spring migration and a fall migration. And so what they do is during those 6, 8 weeks of migration, every morning they put up nets. And imagine like a big volleyball net that's,
okay.
30 feet long and 10 feet high. And the spaces between the net are really small, right?
Okay.
And so what happens is, this is during the peak of migration when the birds are really moving through the area,
Sure.
is when the nets go up, the bird will fly into the net. It
Mm-hmm.
won't hurt the bird, and then they'll fall down, and there's like a little pocket at the bottom of the net that the birds just kind of rest and lay in. And
Okay.
if they struggle, they'll just kind of twist a little bit, and then they'll just be laying there. And then every half hour, the volunteers, so I'm one of the volunteers now, is we would go and check the nets. And
Okay.
then any birds that are in the net, we would learn. And it takes a while to learn how to extract the birds from the
I'm
net.
sure.
Yeah, you want to be delicate because their legs are fragile and sometimes the neck gets, around their wing and you have to learn how to take the birds safely out of the net. And so
Yeah.
then what happens? Now you've got a bird in your hand, and most people in the world have never held a bird. That is
This is true.
such a
Yeah.
magical experience, um, to be holding this tiny little warm feathered creature. You can feel its heart beating, and so what you do, you put it in a bag, like a little pouch, and you tie it up so each bird is in its own bag, and then you walk it back to the observatory. And think of it like a science laboratory. So in
Okay.
the laboratory are trained scientists. So these are These are now paid folks that are, they've graduated from a biology program. They've got their MBA. They do this for a living, and
Sure.
they take the birds out of the bag, and then they weigh them. They decide if it's a male or a female, which sometimes it's easy to do, right? Think of a cardinal, right? The bright red ones
Yeah.
are males, and kind of the brownish ones are females. But
Hmm.
some birds look the same, male and female. And the only difference would be maybe the length of their wing. One is a little
Oh.
shorter than the other. That's right. So they are trained on how to measure and decide the sex of the birds. And then they're also seeing how much fat is on the bird. Birds are storing fat for their migration journey. And it's an arduous journey. So what they do is when they land in the morning, right? Because the birds migrate at night. Not many people know this, but they're flying
Oh,
at night. That's right. That's right. That's why they say it's important to turn off lights during migration, because that's when the birds are flying over the cities. That's right.
gotcha.
And
Okay.
it's easier because it's quieter. They can call to their buddies when they're flying at night. Um, and then they also there's less predators, right? The hawks aren't out at night, and it's a quieter time. And usually there's less wind as well. So
Okay.
they'll land in the morning, and then they'll start eating to refuel themselves to go fly again. So they'll stay in a spot for a day or maybe 2 days while they're building up their fat reserves. And you actually can see the fat reserves if so when the scientists will blow on the bird and the feathers kind of separate and you can see the fat deposits because their skin is translucent and you see these
Oh,
fat bubbles coming through and it's incredible.
that's so
And
weird.
so they're marking that down and then they release the bird. So
Okay.
so that really helped me identify the birds because now I can see the birds up close
Yeah.
and really study them. And so when I go out birding, I'm like, no, I remember that's a cerulean warbler because I just had one in my hand and I really am, I'm close to it. So I started volunteering there a couple years ago. I joined the board of directors for a few years. If you can find a bird observatory near you, do it.
All
What they
right.
also did was they have guided bird walks.
Oh,
And
okay.
so during spring, that's the best time to go birding by far. And that's coming up very soon. Like for
Yes.
me, the first week in May or the second week of May it's like my version of Christmas, right? All the birds come back in our area and try to get on a birding walk. So that first year when I started birding, I went on a birding walk. I signed up. I was so nervous, right? I had never birded in a group. I had, my grandpa binoculars. I didn't have my spotting. I knew nothing about birds. And we saw 79 bird species that day on that walk.
Oh, wow.
But but I couldn't identify him. It was the leader who was saying, that's a scarlet tanager, that's a rose-breasted grosbeak, that's an indigo bunting, and I'm just writing it down. And like the next day I went out birding and I saw like 10 birds. I'm like, what's going on here? And that's when I knew I needed to up my game because I wanted to be like the hike leader who could
Yeah.
identify all of them just by hearing them or seeing them just with a small glance. And I'm like, that's what I want.
I love it. And it's almost like you became this like giant overachiever that had to study for the test that wasn't even there.
That's so true. Because birding, it's like one of those hobbies where like there's no, I don't know, it's all in the honor system, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you've seen more birds than anybody in the world, but nobody's checking, nobody's following you. You don't have to submit a photo. There's no proof. It's just for yourself.
Yeah.
So, like, there's no point lying or cheating, right? This is just for fun, and I don't know, it's just something that overachiever. I'm not sure. I just really love it, um, and that's all I want to do. Really,
I love the
is
passion.
thanks.
So you mentioned binoculars and you've mentioned your bird guides. Is there anything else besides maybe like a camera that you would suggest as far as like
I really
tools
would
go?
suggest with the technology, using eBird to keep track of your lists.
Okay.
And there's also an app called Merlin. Merlin, Merlin. Merlin is also owned by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And what
Okay.
it does is it will listen. If you just turn on the app and hit record, it'll listen to all the bird sounds around you and it'll identify the birds that are singing.
That's really
Incredible.
cool.
They didn't have
Yes.
that when I started birding, but you got to be careful because there's some birds that like to mimic the calls of other birds, right?
Sure.
So like there's
Yep.
a mockingbird, even a blue jay will make the sound of a red-shouldered hawk. It'll make a hawk sound and all the birds will scatter from your backyard, so it'll have the bird feeder to itself. And so Merlin will sometimes say, "Oh, you've got a hawk in your yard," and I'm like, "Wait, no, I was watching the blue jay. That was not a hawk." But then like the starling will make like I had Merlin running this week, and I got a pair of starlings, and they also mimic. And Merlin picked up the call of a brown-headed cowbird. There was like three birds that the starling was mimicking, and it was tricking the AI. But on the whole, it's a great tool. It will tell me and
Fantastic.
tell you what birds are in the area. So I would really recommend having a smartphone with Merlin that will help you learn the calls. And like a camera.
Sure.
I when I started birding, I took my camera. I've got a decent sized lens. It's a 100 to 400 millimeter lens. And when I first started birding, I would just take as many photos as possible and then come back home and try to identify the bird.
Yeah.
Uh, but now I use it to document the rare birds I see. Because I want to, I'm trying to have as many photographs of all the different birds I've seen in my lifetime. Yeah,
Sure.
a lot
So
of fun.
now you've mentioned that you tend to prefer the books that have like illustrations rather than pictures. Have you ever tried your hand at illustrating some of the birds that you found?
Oh man, I am not an artist. Oh my gosh. Remember, I was in finance, right? So I am definitely left-brained. Everything's in a spreadsheet, which is probably why I like counting birds. But the drawing side, I leave that to the experts. No.
Fair enough.
No.
Worship from afar, take pictures, and then let other people take the or do the
Even my
illustrating.
photographs stink. They're awful.
Oh,
They're
I
never
don't
in
think
focus.
so. Even just looking at your Instagram, you've got quite the eye.
Thanks.
So, besides the Cornell and or I'm sorry, the eBird and the Merlin apps,
Yeah.
and I guess the only other places that people would be able to, I guess, go to find out more information about like their local birds would be something like the bird observatories or even like the nature areas or something.
Sometimes if you go to a little nature park, they'll have a sign, here are the birds that you can see in the area.
Hmm.
But really, I would recommend going to ebird.org. It's everything's free. It's all
Okay.
free. It's all free. Create an account, and then you can say, where do you live? You can just enter your county, and it'll show you all the birds being seen in your county. And they call them hotspots. So a hotspot is where birds tend to congregate, usually lakes, right? Or the
Okay.
nature park, or a reserve, or a national park, or a state park, right? That's birds like, if you look at a map where the green areas are, or the
Yeah.
blue areas, that's where birds like to go. And not a big surprise. So
No.
each of these spots on eBird is called a hotspot. And then you can just click on the hotspot and see all the recent bird sightings. And so I usually do that before I go somewhere to get an
Okay.
idea of what birds are in the area. And if there's a bird that's in the area that I've never seen before, then I'll take up my bird book or I'll look it up online and just refresh what this bird looks like or maybe what it sounds like. That's what I do. Yeah.
Wonderful. I like it. And then it's almost like a challenge how many
It
of them you
is.
can spot in that one little trip. Yeah. I
Yep.
love it. So, how many different species do you think you've spotted throughout your birding
Yeah.
adventure?
Well, it's easy for me to tell you because on eBird, it keeps track of it's called a life list. So all the
Okay.
birds that you've seen in your lifetime. Been to like 45 countries, but I've only been a birder in maybe the last six of those countries. So like,
Okay.
and I'm at 1,098 different bird species.
Wow.
And so there's 11,000 birds documented worldwide, right? That it could go
Okay.
It goes up and down. Usually it goes up more than down because we're discovering more birds than they're going extinct, which is a good
That's
thing for
good.
So if I've seen 1,100 out of 11,000, right, that's roughly 10% of the world's birds. Um,
That's
and
quite the
crazy enough,
accomplishment.
the top birder in the world just passed the 10,000 bird mark. So
Oh,
he's
wow.
the 10,000 of the 11,000. It's quite incredible. Yeah. So we got a
That
long
is.
ways to go.
So is it your goal to basically catch them all and see all of them in the wild?
No, I don't know. I need to have some balance in my life, but I enjoy it so much. I want to keep traveling and keep ticking them off the list. I just enjoy
Fair
it so much.
enough.
I was in France for the last 2 weeks. I just got back
Oh,
this week. Yeah, I know.
wow.
And we went there as, my wife and our daughter, we went there as a holiday, but I brought my Birds of Europe book and I brought my binoculars. And any chance I took, I was out there looking for the European birds. And such a magical spot. We found this park where all the flamingos of Europe kind of roost and stay there for the winter. There was like 3,000 flamingos. And I had never seen a flamingo in the wild. I'd seen them at a zoo, but to see them in the wild, they're such incredible birds. They're like super tall. They're like 5 feet tall. They got these teeny skinny legs and they are loud. They're chattering, their heads are up and they're just like, and it was like the most magical experience. So like that's what happens when you travel. You see birds that you won't see back at home.
Yeah. I
And
honestly
maybe
didn't know flamingos lived in Europe.
I know when I think of flamingos, I think of, I don't know, Florida or the
Yeah.
Everglades or something. But no, they're in Africa, they're in Europe, they're in South America. Um, they're just they're just not in mainland North America. We're
Okay.
missing our flamingos. Everyone needs to go see flamingos. That's
Yes,
my
I
homework
agree.
assignment. Go find a flamingo.
I love it. And not the plastic ones your neighbors have in their yard.
No,
Those don't count. Okay, so do you have like a favorite species of bird, or is there just too many for you to pick?
when I started posting videos on Instagram,
Hmm.
the videos that became most popular are when I tell people how to find an owl. And I think owls are just such magical birds. There's like mystery, there's like the whole Harry Potter thing.
Yep.
But like I also, when I find an owl, like my hair stands up, the goosebumps come out because you just feel like you're in the presence of something so special, so magical, so mysterious. Like I would say owls, and going out and finding owls on your own is like that's like birding to the next level. So I just love that part. And in the fall at the bird observatory that I volunteer at,
Mhm.
we banned owls. We specifically stay open and open up our night nets at nighttime, and we're getting the migratory owls. And the ones that are
Wonderful.
migrating are the tiniest little fluff balls. They're called northern saw-whet owls. So
Okay.
it's a long name, but imagine just remember the Furbies from 20 years ago? It's like the
Yes.
teeniest little thing with the biggest eyes. That's what a saw-whet owl is. It's like the size of a Coke can and the eyes of like golf balls. And like when you see it, you're like, that can't be real. It's so adorable. I want to put this in my pocket and take it home. But they're still owls. They're still vicious. They still, hunt the mice, but because they're so small, they can only eat half a mouse at a time, and they'll save the other half for tomorrow. It's like, oh, it's so cute. So that's like my favorite time of year is when I can go and study the saw-whet owls and hold them in your hand, and you're like, my gosh, this is so precious. So I love being able to go and finding the saw-whets in the wild as well. They make this cutest little sound. Imagine a kid like an elementary school kid trying to learn how to play the recorder. Remember those
Okay.
recorders when you play Mary Had a Little Lamb? But like it's like a toot, toot, toot,
Yeah.
toot, 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 toot. That's the sound of a saw-whet owl. So sometimes you'll hear that at night if you're staying somewhere, camping in the woods or something, and you'll hear that, and you're like, that's a saw-whet owl. I'm going to try to find it tomorrow because they'll just stay totally motionless during the daytime if you just know the clues on how to find an owl in the daytime. I love it.
Wonderful. I think a lot of people have quite the fascination with owls. They're one of my favorites as well. And I think that large presence that they have must at least partially explain why they're so prevalent in like a bunch of different mythologies around the world too. They feel like there's something otherworldly and like they're trying to tell you something important. And I think when you described the little saw-whet owls, I think I saw one about 2 years ago. Just I was out, unfortunately, my cat had gone missing and I was out looking for him. And instead I thought it was just like a little bitty baby owl. But I'm thinking now it might have been a saw-whet instead.
Yeah. So remind me where you live.
I'm in Illinois.
Illinois. Okay. Yep. They'll have saw-whet owls there. Yep, for sure. Yep.
All
That could
right.
have been
Well,
it. You
cool.
could have, yeah, put that on your life list.
Yes, absolutely. Now you've got me. The last thing I need is like more hobbies because I'm always taking on too many of them. But as soon as I reached out to you on Instagram and everything, I was like, all right, yep, I guess I'm a birder now because I can't turn it off. Okay. I do have one kind of sillier question. What do you think about when people like refer to birds basically as like modern day dinosaurs? Does that tickle you or is it kind of just meh?
No, I think there's some truth to it. Absolutely. I think it was 66 million years ago when the meteorite came and destroyed the Earth and all the big dinosaurs. I think what happened was just the small dinosaurs, which were birds, are the ones
Sure.
that survived. I think they say like nothing bigger than a duck really survived that mass extinction event. And
Yeah.
so the few birds that survived are what we have now, and they evolved. And I think they were able to survive because they had wings. They could get out of that area where the ash cloud was, and they started evolving. And they flew then to all the different continents. I mean, there's birds on every continent, right?
Yeah.
There's penguins in Antarctica, right? Um,
Yes.
that's why people love birds so much because no matter where you are in the world, there's a bird.
They're
So
pretty.
no, I have no problem with the idea that birds came from dinosaurs. You even Google it and you'll see pictures of velociraptors now with
Yes.
artist renderings of wings, right? It makes sense, right? The dinosaurs have these little teeny arms. We're
Mm-hmm.
like, well, maybe those were actually the little arms actually had wings.
Yes.
I'm okay with that. I mean, we're not there now. We don't really know. It's just our best guess. So I'm okay with us changing our idea of what happened in the past. Yeah.
I like it. I think it makes dinosaurs also a little bit more real for people as well to see kind of their descendants, today. So I think it's cool. And I also just love the imagery of like people with backyard chickens basically having like Godzilla like creatures just stomping around in their yard.
Well, just the way that birds walk, right? They walk on the 2 feet, right? They bend over, they peck like a chicken would. Like they don't have the arms. Like they kind of make sense that they're miniature dinosaurs. Like
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
I like it. So what is a birder's worst enemy? I think I have an idea, but I'm curious if it's different from what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so like the scientific answer is climate change and habitat loss. Um, but it feels like that feels so far removed from you and I. Like, how do
Sure.
you and I change that, right? It's so like when I'm out birding, the things that bother me are when I see it is people that let their cats outside. That's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest predation of birds is cats. So try to keep your cats indoors. And if
Yes.
if you don't want to do that, then there's something simple you can do. You just put a little bell on the collar of your cat. So that will at least tell the birds that the cat is nearby and they'll
Yeah.
stay clear.
Give
The
them a
other
little
thing you
heads
can
up.
do, if you know your neighbor's cat is always out, don't put your bird feeders near bushes where the cat can hide, right? So you want to put it at least like 6 feet away from the bushes so that the birds won't get surprised.
Sure.
Yeah.
We don't
You
want
don't
any
want
ambushes.
that's right. But you also want the feeder close enough where if there's a hawk or something flying over, the birds can retreat to those
Gotcha.
shrubs or those bushes. So you really want like not closer than 5 feet, but not further than 10, right? So that's kind of the zone where you want bird feeders near shrubs or something where the birds can safely retreat to. Because those hawks, they'll come out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
That's that's
I don't have a
unfortunate
problem with
too.
hawks in my backyard. Because hawks have to eat too. They're birds. I love watching hawks. Don't get me wrong. Every time a Cooper's hawk come into my backyard, I get excited. But what I do know is every Cooper's hawk eats one bird a day. So I just don't want it to be my favorite woodpecker. I'll let him eat the starlings or the rock pigeon. But I don't get too sad when a hawk has to eat. Um, we have a pair of red-tailed hawks in our backyard,
Oh,
which they nest there every year, which is fantastic.
very
And I'll
cool.
see them swooping into the woods. We also have a pair of nesting great horned owls in our backyard, which
Oh,
you can hear them calling back and forth. So when two owls are calling, it's called duetting. So a
oh,
male and a female great horned owls, they'll do their whoo, whoo, whoo. And like the male goes and then the female responds with a little higher pitched one. So it's fun to get to know your backyard birds. And then when the babies come, they have this like unique begging call where they're like saying, "Mom, I'm hungry, give me food, give me food." Like every 20 minutes, they're begging for food. It's an exhausting thing to be an owl mama,
I'm
constantly trying to
sure.
get, which is good for my backyard because I don't have any rats or mice because the owls and the hawks take care of it all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but they all got to
So,
eat. I love it.
yes. So I kind of had a feeling that people's outdoor cats were probably a pretty big contributor.
Yeah.
And
I'll just say one more thing about the also window strikes.
oh yes.
Right? So you can now get these little white dots, these little stickers that you can put on your windows. I haven't done that at my house, but there's one window that was struck like 3 times. And so I'm
Oh,
like, there's a problem with this window because they just see the reflection of the woods, just the way the angle
oh,
of the window. And so all they see when they're flying is, oh, they see another tree, but it's just a reflection of the tree behind them. So on that one window, that was a problem. I put up these a decal that makes like a rainbow prism inside. So like when the light goes through, it
yeah.
reflects, and so it's really pretty inside, and it saves the birds on the outside. So that's what we did.
That's fantastic. When I was growing up, we had a little I think it was a hummingbird that would just repeatedly come and bonk itself into our window for like half an hour every day. It was really strange because we almost thought that maybe he had been taken in by somebody and had been allowed access to the house before or something with how gung ho he was about just that one window and keeping on like dive bombing it. Now I'm wondering if he just kept thinking he was seeing a tree.
No, I'll tell you what that was. Hummingbirds are little buggers.
Oh,
They are territorial little jerks.
oh
And what
no.
what it was doing is he was seeing a rival in the window. He was seeing the enemy hummingbird. He didn't know it was his own reflection. And so what he was doing is
Oh,
he was trying to chase off the other hummingbird.
oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. So you'll
Wow.
you'll notice hummingbirds around the feeder, they have a pecking order, and the dominant one, like he owns that feeder. And if you
Okay.
try to get on his feeder, he'll fight you off. And so one recommendation I have for hummingbird feeder yards is put a few around the yard, so many so that one hummingbird can't control all of them.
Yeah.
He's like, it's too much. They're too far apart. I can't manage them all up for myself. So he'll only take one for himself, and then you can have other hummingbird families in your yard at the same time. But
That's
yeah,
a good
they're
idea.
they're feisty little buggers.
I love them. They're so beautiful. But yeah, I have heard a few different stories of them being kind of jerks. And I'm curious too, did you hear about Flaco, the Eurasian eagle owl?
Yeah, it's sad that
Yeah.
he got hit by a car.
A
Um,
car. Oh, the last I heard, they were
oh,
thinking it was a window. Popping in here to say that while we were recording this interview, we weren't aware, we were kind of waiting for results about Flacco's actual cause of death. And it has since come out that it was a case of him eating a mouse that had been poisoned. So, just a little PSA here, do not use poison if you have a mouse problem. All right, back to the interview.
oh, no, I hadn't heard that part. Okay, that's interesting. That's sad because that could have been maybe,
Prevented.
yeah. I thought it was a strike of a vehicle. So okay,
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but the last time I looked at it, that was what they were at least thinking. Maybe the necropsy has come back and they've found it to be different somehow. But it was really sad for me too, especially because that is something that I'm like always worried about because we've got like a big old sun porch that's just all windows, and I'm always scared that one of the birds that we're trying to draw into our yard is going to wind up colliding with that and not make it. And it's especially sad when it's an owl because I love them so much.
yeah.
So does your family share your fascination with our feathery friends?
They have no problem going with me on hikes.
Okay.
I wouldn't say they are thrilled that I'm always lagging behind looking for birds. And sometimes they'll just say, Rick, you just go birding
Fair enough.
and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
But actually, in the last 6 months, my oldest son has gotten really into it.
Oh,
And
good.
he's taking my my modern birding for beginners course, and he's, I would say, a star pupil. In fact,
Awesome.
he borrowed my spotting scope a month ago, and I don't think I'm getting it back.
Oh.
So a spotting scope is like, imagine a binocular on steroids.
Oh,
It's like a telescope that you use to see birds at a great distance. It's got a
okay.
tripod, and usually we use those when we're at lakes or at the ocean when birds are really far away, and
Gotcha.
just binoculars aren't working. So yeah, so he's really gotten into it this year, which thrills me, of course. And so when he calls home, he lives a couple hours away. When he calls home, my wife, she just leaves the room because she knows we're just gonna be talking birds for the next half hour. Yeah,
That's awesome, though, that you can share that with him as well.
yeah.
So, is this something that do you pursue this year round, or is like the bird population a little bit too sparse during the winter?
No, I would say wintertime for me is the best time of bird watching.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh, it is. Because that's really when the birds will come to your yard more, right?
Because there's not as much food available
Not as much
elsewhere.
food, right? So all the migrants have left, and all that's left are the hardy birds that are going, all right, I'm going to stick it out this winter, and they're going to kind of look for the yards with the bird feeders to supplement their diet, right?
Okay.
So I kind of take that as I'm kind of the caretaker for my yard, and so and then I get to study and get to know the local birds, right? So I've got the
Yeah.
same chickadees that live in my backyard, the same two nuthatches that live in my backyard, the same five woodpeckers, and like you really get to know them, and they start trusting you more. They
Awesome.
really do. They start learning that I go out there at 9 a.m. and fill up the bird feeder, and at 9:05 the blue jays they'll even come knock on the window if I haven't put my peanuts out.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, they know peanut time is 9 a.m.
They're like,
and
waiter.
they'll make a ruckus, and they'll even hop up and start pecking at the window saying,
Oh my
"Get me
gosh.
that peanut." And I make sure I have water in the wintertime. I have a heated bird bath because birds need water, and they'll find a year-round residence that has access to water. So either a stream that doesn't freeze over or a marina or a trickle so I have a heated bird bath that I fill up also every morning. Uh,
Wonderful.
yeah, I know. It's so fascinating. I get a lot of comments on my Instagram about, hey, can you teach people how to train crows or ravens to bring you shiny objects? And it's like a whole thing on the gram now. People that are training wild crows to bring them shiny. It happens. It is true. You can do this, and
It's
they'll bring
honestly
you.
one of my life goals.
Yeah, they'll bring you a coin or they'll bring you a special whatever bottle cap or what. Like they love shiny objects, and so like I follow this guy. I'll tell you his account is maybe you've already followed this guy, Milk House 6000.
I don't think I do yet,
So
but I'll check
it's
them
it's
out.
hilarious. This guy feeds birds and then he documents all the shiny objects that the crows bring.
So, do you
Um,
have any tips for attracting crows specifically to someone's yard in case they want to be the crazy crow lady?
yeah, so if you want to be the crazy crow lady, I would use cat food.
Oh, like
Yep.
the dry stuff or the wet
Dry
stuff?
cat food. Crows
Okay.
love dry cat food. What I'd also do is you're going to want a loud surface for the crow to hear you putting the cat food on. Imagine like a
Oh,
like a tin roof or like a metal roof. And if you do it at the same time where you throw the cat food onto the roof, right? They'll hear that. And that will be the
okay.
clue that the food is out. And then you're going to want to have them drop an object onto the loud roof so that you hear that in return, right?
Gotcha.
So now you're starting to train. It's like Pavlov's dog that the loud sound
Yeah.
equals food. And so then if they want to get food and you don't have it, they need to make that loud sound to you, which is by dropping an object onto that loud roof.
Gotcha. Very clever. I like
And
that.
cat food is cheap.
Yeah.
It's there's I don't think there's any nutritional value, but the crows aren't counting on that as their whole diet. They're spending the rest of their day. Imagine you're just like giving them potato chips. Like you're just giving them a
It's a little
snack that
treat.
will then
Yeah.
yeah, another treat. That's right. I want to
Well,
hear all
good.
about it. Good luck. I think you should start your Crow Lady Instagram account and I'll follow you.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm thinking just like take an old cookie sheet and set it outside and just fling the cat food onto that and see if that brings them my way.
Good idea.
So do you collect anything from the birds that you see, like feathers you find? Do you scrapbook with their photos? Do you journal about them? Anything like that?
Yeah. So I do keep feathers um only to study them when I get home. I've
Okay.
got a bird book called Bird Feathers, and it goes through every bird in North America, and it shows
Okay.
all the different bird type. Are there like that? Here's their wing feathers, here's their tail feathers, here's their body feathers. So when I see a feather on the ground, I typically pick it up and put it in my pocket, take it home, and I try to identify it. Now, most people don't know this. I'm getting really quiet and hushy that it's actually illegal to pick up a bird feather.
Oh,
I know.
whoops.
I know. There's this law called the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the MBTA, where it says it's illegal to possess any part of a migratory bird. So that's a
Okay.
feather that's included. Now, do I think the game wardens are going to show up at my house and take my 6 blue jay feathers from my office? I don't think so. I think it's more for the trafficking of animals and the people that are, harming the birds or illegally shooting them.
Yeah.
But they make that rule for everybody. So it's actually technically illegal. So I got to say that. But I do it for my own pleasure, for my own hobby. I've got, I don't know, I've got like a turkey vulture feather, which is amazing. It's like 2 feet long.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so it's just fun to see the different sizes of feathers and like the different way they feel. Like a duck feather is like water repellent, whereas
Yeah.
like a blue jay feather isn't. Like it's just really fascinating when you have them in your hand, the different bird feathers. But what I also do is there's a lady near me who's a feathersmith. So she's a Mohawk traditional feathersmith, and she makes art and crafts out of feathers that are found on her native lands. So
Wow.
when I see a special bird that's unfortunately dead, I'll bring it to her, and I know that she will process it respectfully, and something will good will come out of that bird. So that's what I do. But there might not be one near you,
Sure.
and I make sure I wash my hands.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Always a
so
good
I
idea.
try to be respectful. Yeah,
I love that. And I like the idea of something beautiful coming out of something sad. And I can't think of anything better or more respectful than a native person making beautiful and culturally significant designs with it and everything. That's really cool.
that's right. That's right. And it's spiritual. It's healing. I think it's everything good. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. So, what is like the one thing that you would want to be able to tell absolutely everybody about birds, birding, this whole ordeal?
I would say you don't need to know and to be able to identify birds to get the health benefit of birding. If you just go outside, the studies have even proven it. Just 10 minutes a day. Just sit in your backyard or find a park. Maybe it's on your lunch break. Just sit and soak it in, right? Just 10 minutes of bird song or watching their behavior. You don't have to know that that was a junco or a song sparrow. You just need to know that that was a bird in your presence. It was doing its thing and you were just soaking it in. It's
Yeah.
going to help your anxiety. It's going to help your mental health. It's going to lower your depression. It's going to encourage you to get up and walk. It's going to help your weight loss. Like everything good about getting into nature is just by doing it. And
That's fantastic.
once you get out there, you might then start asking yourself, what bird is that? And then you're going to want to try to identify it.
And you'll
And
fall
then
down the
you're going
rabbit
to
hole.
keep track of it. And then the rabbit hole. And then
Yes.
you're going to be like me in 5 years and go, what is my life come to? I'm the bird.
I feel like there are a lot worse things to be than the birding guy. I'm just saying.
It's fun. I love it.
Wonderful. And I was also curious. So I know you have a bunch of different like feeders and everything for the birds in your backyard. Have you done any other kind of like alterations to your yard area for the benefit of all the birdies?
Well, actually, it was my goal to start planting native plants, right?
Okay.
Right. Take out all of the shrubs that are just ornamental, right? That have no benefit to the
Yeah.
birds of your area. And actually, it was pretty special. Last year for Father's Day, I was away on a fishing trip for a week. And as a gift, my Father's Day present when I came home is my wife and daughter had ripped up part of our garden and planted all native pollinator plants for the
Awesome.
birds and for the bees. And that, like, to me, that was my love language, right? Is
Yes.
helping the birds, helping bring more species to my backyard. And I can't recommend enough to everybody who's listening is go research what plants are supposed to be in my yard. What plants were
Absolutely.
here 100 years ago? Because the birds and the insects, they're not going to touch the ornamental, the species that are brought over from Asia or Europe. Like, 'cause that's to them, that's not real food. That's
Yeah.
just that's just pretty flower that has no benefit to them. So they're gonna skip your yard and go to the neighbors that has the all the native plants. So like that's what I would recommend is just Google what plant is native in my area and then start planting
Absolutely.
them.
Heck
It's
yeah.
easy.
I know, right? And I'm so excited. I can't wait for it to be warm enough for me to finally start my pollinator garden because that's exactly what I've been doing all through winter is just researching all of the native plants and the ones that are especially important to the various pollinators, the hummingbirds, the butterflies, the bees, and everybody. And I've just been trying to gather as much information as possible. And now I'm just sitting here looking at the clock and waiting for it to warm up enough to actually start planting.
Yep.
Well, would you like the opportunity to kind of plug your social media where people can find you and learn from you and also find that course of yours?
Sure. Yeah. So go to Instagram, just type in birding, and for some strange reason, I'm the first one that'll come up. But it's the full length is birding with Rick. So there's hyphens, so it's birding _ Rick, birding with Rick. Just typing birding and you'll see my face there. Follow me there, or you can go to my website, which is modernbirding.com. And that's
Perfect.
where you can find, I've got free courses, I've got paid courses, and I call it modern birding because like, I like to think of myself as kind of young. I'm not the retired old guy with his vest and his hat and kind of the old school snobby birder. I'm very inclusive. I use tips and tricks. I'm like, anybody can learn how to bird, make it fun. So that's what modern birding is to me. All right, everybody.
Absolutely. Very accessible. I love that. Well, thank you very much for coming on. This was so much fun. I absolutely love getting to learn from people who have, honestly, you're living my life, my dream life here. Getting to just do what you love and what you're so passionate about all day, every day, and just essentially playing grown-up Pokemon.
I love it. Yeah. Thanks, Rachel, and thanks for doing what you're doing with the podcast.
Thank you.
I know it's not easy, right? It's not easy to keep this up. So
no, it's not always easy, but it is fun. And I love getting to make connections with people like you. It's my favorite part about podcasting.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This was such a fun interview. I know it was a bit of a longer episode, but there's just so much information to be shared about our backyard birds. So please check out Rick's Instagram and website to find some more information there. Maybe even check out that course. And also, while you're at it, check out our own social media on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. We are All for Animals Pod, and on Instagram, we are All for Animals Podcast. And remember, too, if you guys would like to request a certain topic for an episode, be featured, have a fun listener story, crazy listener story, whatever it may be, feel free to send those to allforanimalspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next time.